Hi, I'm James Shillinglaw, and today I'm with Catherine Held, who's the co-founder and CEO of Remote Lands. And we've interviewed Catherine before, as she was just reminding me, probably during the pandemic, which was not a good time. And here we are in a much, much better time. And we're going to talk about what Remote Lands, what it does, first of all, how bookings are, and what she sees as the trends. And Remote Lands, just to give you a little teaser, is focuses really on Asia travel, and we're going to do that and a whole lot more on Insider Travel Report. Now, Catherine, first of all, it's great to see you again. I see you around trade shows, but we haven't actually gotten together until that last interview a couple of years ago. So, remind us first about what Remote Lands is and what it focuses on.
So we started back in 2005 and we officially opened our doors in 2006 to focus exclusively on high-end Asia travel, including off the beaten path travel, which is why we named the company Remote Lands.
Okay.
So that was our concept almost 19 years ago, and people thought we were crazy. Like, why are you focusing on Asia? Nobody goes to Asia. Everybody goes to Europe.
Europe.
But for Jay Tyndall and I, who had both lived in Hong Kong for many years, Asia was what we knew. Asia
Right.
was what we were passionate about. And so we were at the bleeding edge, but that's the story of my life. I'm always at the bleeding edge. But
Oh,
now
that,
finally, we're at the right place at the right time.
no, certainly Asia is back, and it just recently back in the last year or two. But let's talk about that because what are the destinations that are trending for your company in 24 and 25, and what are travel advisors booking most?
So Japan continues to be our number one country, which is great. We love Japan, but it's all also very difficult during peak seasons. So cherry blossom, festive. I mean, it's just crazy. So instead of traveling at those peak seasons, we're recommending travel in May, travel in the fall. And in fact, a lot of people are traveling in what were hitherto off seasons.
Mhm.
So people never used to travel to Japan in the summer because they thought it was too hot and humid.
Sure.
Now, a lot of people travel then. This past winter, we had a lot of people going skiing in Niseko and then traveling to other parts of Japan. So in the past, people did not travel in the summer or the winter, but now a lot do. And actually, in a lot of ways, that's better.
No, I would think it would be. Now you also offer off the beaten path stuff. So where are they
Yes.
going in Japan? Obviously they go through Tokyo, but where I mean, and we know Osaka and all these incredible destinations, but where do you kind of put them? Because you do also offer sort of off the beaten track
Yeah.
trips.
Yeah. So everybody's first trip to Japan is Tokyo, Kyoto, maybe Osaka, maybe Hiroshima. They always ask for that the first time. But now more and more of our clients are going back a second, third, fourth, fifth time. My personal specialty is off the beaten path Japan because I've been dozens and dozens of times, but who's counting?
Right.
And I love going to these rural areas of Japan that are absolutely beautiful. I love going to the little villages. I was just on this remote island called Goto Island, which is off the western coast of Kyushu. And believe me, I was the only Westerner on
Really? That's
that
cool.
island. And it was just so cool. And actually, that island, this is just one example, that island was where the Japanese Christians escaped to because they were persecuted during the samurai times.
Wow.
So the government actually killed them, killed Christians. So so they all went to this little island and it's covered with little cute little churches. So
That's very unique, very different. Yeah, and so you're saying, and in fact, my partner, my business partner Alan, just got back from Japan, and he did more the typical, Tokyo, Kyoto, Osaka, just for a quick week. Yeah, he actually won the trip from Japan National Tourist Organization.
Oh, wow.
But they didn't really give him a guided tour around there. So he's very came back very enthused about Japan. So it sounds like for your second or third trip is something like what you're suggesting is what you should do, right?
Yes, and go to Shikoku, go to Kyushu, like I said, go to Mount Koya. Uh, Japan is very spiritual, and of course, you probably know that the Japanese are Buddhist, but
Right.
they're also Shinto at the same time. And Shintoism worships nature. So every rock, every tree, every flower has a spirit, which I think is absolutely beautiful. So they respect the earth a lot more than many other countries do because of the Shintoism.
Yeah,
But
yeah. Well, in fact, in this era of sustainability and sustainable travel, it sounds like they're a great destination as well.
yes, absolutely. And then there are a lot of pilgrimages that you can do in Japan. So I just did the Kumano Kodo, which is it's about a 4-day hike,
Right.
and it's in the south, and you hiked between the three important shrines, and it's absolutely amazing. And this path was carved 1,000 years ago, and it's a lot of stone steps, and you pass little temples, and it's just so spiritual if you have that side to you. And then in Shikoku, you can do the 88 temple pilgrimage, which is similar. It's you're actually ambulating or navigating Shikoku Island.
Hmm.
And then a lot of people are going up to Hokkaido. So if you're traveling in the summer, Hokkaido is your best bet, or
Right.
the mountains of Nagano, because it's much, much cooler and it's absolutely beautiful. And like I was saying, we had a lot of people go skiing this year in Hokkaido and a little bit in Nagano. If you remember, the Winter Olympics of 1988 were held in Nagano.
Right.
And you and I are old enough to remember that very
Yeah,
well.
I do. I do
um,
remember it.
but now people are going more to Niseko because it has the driest powder in the world. It's so dry you can't make a snowball. And now there are a lot of really nice accommodations, Michelin star restaurants. And now it's a new for skiers, it's a new bragging rights. It used to be, oh, I'm going skiing in Val d'Isère or Chamonix. Now it's much cooler to say you're going skiing in Japan, in Niseko.
Well, I have a very good friend who has been there many times, and he swears by it. He's a big skier, and you're right. That's one of his bragging rights that he skied a lot back in Nagano. Now, Japan is booming, but there are other countries that are really starting to click a little bit, and one of them is Korea.
Mhm.
Korea's popularity is rising. Is that right? And where are people going in Korea?
Yeah, so it's very interesting because again, we started the company 19 years ago almost. And for our first 14, 15 years, we almost never got a Korea request.
Hmm.
And then K-pop came along.
Oh, God.
So Psy and BTS and Blackpink. And all of a sudden, I mean, all these young people, you have younger kids. People are obsessed with K-pop. So
Wow.
it's really changed everything. And K-drama as well, and then K-beauty. So it's all called the K-wave.
Oh,
So,
wow. So
so
K-Wave has resulted in actually more, in your case, luxury travel. So that's interesting.
yes, yeah. So it really is interesting. And the coolness factor, I mean, the Korean government and then these big Korean companies were behind this.
Hmm.
So it wasn't just organically happening the way like the Beatles, or some garage band. These were big companies that came along and they said, we're going to spend a lot of money and have high production values. And we're going to put our country on the map and create this whole phenomenon. And so a lot of Korean travel is driven by the kids actually, who
Wow.
say to their parents, I want to go to Korea. And the parents were like, why? And so
Well,
it's
that's great, and it's a country. Sadly, I have been through Seoul Airport a few times in my life, but have never stopped, and I keep wanting to do it. I've done a little bit more of Japan, but Korea remains a bit of an enigma for me, and I definitely want to go one of these days. Now, you have Korea, you have Japan. And apparently, I understand there's finally suddenly new interest in China and places like Tibet, even after 4 years of literally nobody going there, and it's difficult. I was actually supposed to go to Tibet last year, but the process was a little too involved, and I just finally gave up. I didn't have the window I needed to get there because I had some friends who have resorts there, and I was going to go. But what are you seeing in terms of China and places around China and even Tibet?
Well, before the pandemic and before Japan boomed, everybody went to China back then.
Right.
So they'd go to Hong Kong and China and Tibet. And we were doing a lot of pan Himalayas. So you'd go from Tibet to Nepal to Bhutan, and that was very cool. But then, of course, it was slowing down even before the pandemic, just because China was no longer seen as quite such a desirable place to visit. But it's such a huge country. I mean, you
Oh
really,
yeah, no, it's like you can't say I went to China. It's like I went to the
yeah,
United States or I went to Europe. Where did you go? Like
yeah, yeah. And it's so beautiful. That's the thing.
yeah.
People don't realize the physical beauty, and the roads are amazing and the accommodations are
And
amazing.
the trains are amazing and things like that
Yes,
that they do.
yes.
It's a really getting to be a modern country. I saw it at the very beginning of that. And now, I mean, I have been there in about 10, 15 years and I really want to go back, but it is an amazing place. And hopefully later this year, I'll get over there. But you're seeing an uptick now because of this.
Yes, finally,
Yeah.
it took forever, but now and now people are requesting Hong Kong and China. Hong Kong is doing a big tourism push, actually, because they're still not
I
nearly.
know. Yeah, I'm supposed to go to some event later this month for Hong Kong. And
Yeah,
of course, now the Chinese have actually eased some restrictions on visas and stuff like that. So that was a good news we had earlier this year.
yeah. Well, they were smart to do that because making it very difficult to go into China was not smart. I mean,
Yeah.
not if they want outside tourists, and every country needs outside tourists coming in.
Well, with COVID and everything else, and they weren't too welcoming initially, but now they seem to be back on track. And the
Mhm.
reverse too, the Chinese travelers coming over here and everywhere again. So that's always good news. Now, beyond China and all these things we've talked about, you also offer some what I would call somewhat exotic trips, not that these aren't exotic, to the stands.
Mhm.
And I looked up what the stands were because I was like, wait, the only one I knew was Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan, but there are about three more out there. And I don't know if you offer trips to them. I can't even pronounce them. Turkmenistan, Tajikistan, and oh God,
Kyrgyzstan.
Kyrgyzstan. Okay. I have to learn how to pronounce that. But why are these popular and what are you seeing of people going there?
Well, the stands are almost completely unknown to Westerners, and they weren't even to me until I went there a few years ago, and I found it absolutely fascinating. So people lump them together. So again, they're Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan. People lump them together,
Say
but in
that
fact,
three times real fast, and we'll give you a prize. That is that is like wow. I knew, as I said, I knew two of them, but not all of them.
well, you know Kazakhstan because of Borat.
And also because I have to say, I was at Disneyland or Disney World once, and I met a whole lot of very attractive people walking around. I said they sort of were at a little Asian looking, and they all spoke English. And I'm like, "Where are you from?" They asked me to take a photo. Oh, where are you from? I'm from Kazakhstan, and I'm like, "What? What? How are you here?" And they were just very nice, and I'm like, "Whoa!" And I have had friends go to Kazakhstan actually, so it's different, not just because of Borat, which is kind of I don't know
Right.
if Borat's been a positive for them or not, but it's a kind of a modern country, right?
It is very modern. I was just in Almaty, which is the Almaty and Astana are the two big cities. And It's beautiful. It's
Mhm.
clean, high-rise buildings. It's a very rich country
Right.
because of the oil. If you look on the map, Kazakhstan is massive. The other stands are much smaller, but it's the
Mhm.
oil money. And they're very well educated. And you're right, they are very good-looking people.
No,
So,
no, and really, and then actually, the president of Seabourn Cruise Line is from Uzbekistan, actually. So
okay.
that's right. That so where are you from? She's a wonderful accent and she's a very attractive young woman who is now the president of Seabourn. And
Oh,
I was like, that's amazing. So these are places that we need to go discover, and I guess you have a
yes.
good way to do that, right?
Yes, well, Uzbekistan was the center of the world for the arts, astronomy, science, and learning with the madrasas of Samarkand and Bukhara in the 14th and 15th century. So it was a very well educated place. And that architecture is still there and it is magnificent. So I highly recommend Uzbekistan is for the architecture and the
Right.
history. Kazakhstan is for the is a little different. It's for the modernity, but it's
Okay.
also beautiful, beautiful mountains.
Yeah.
Tajikistan and Kyrgyzstan also have beautiful scenery and beautiful mountains. And all of these countries are Muslim, of course.
Yeah.
When the Soviets took over, they brought in vodka, so alcohol is widely served, and it's much more moderate than the Middle East.
Okay. Yeah, well, I would think so. Yeah, that's it. No, it's that, and we think of another stand, Afghanistan, which
Right,
this
right.
is that's just a mess right now, and will
Yeah.
continue to be a mess. But and it's not too far away. But these are like night and day. These kind of countries versus what we saw over there.
Yeah, so there's something called the Pamir Highway, which is southern Tajikistan going over to Kyrgyzstan, and that borders with Afghanistan, but you can't go over the border. And of course, we don't do Afghanistan or Pakistan, so we only do 5 stands.
Okay, so you do the five good ones, not at this point. Although I recently had some interest in Pakistan, so I had somebody asking me on a trip there. So maybe who knows. Now let's move over to someplace which definitely a little more friendly, and these stands are really friendly. You're seeing more interest in the Philippines, right?
Hmm. Well, the Philippines have some of the world's most beautiful white sand beaches, crystal clear blue waters. I mean, it's just physically beautiful from a totally different, not mountains, but beach. And of course, Filipinos all speak English.
Oh yeah.
If you remember, so the Spanish colonized the Philippines,
Hmm.
and then we Americans went over and we said, well, they will help you get out from under the Spanish because they didn't want to be part of Spain. So we went over and helped them.
To
And then
become part of the United States for a while, if I
I
recall.
know. Well, we turned around and we took them,
Yeah,
which was
yeah,
really
I know the history and they know it very well. They're very
yes,
nice about it, but there's they said, yeah, well, you took over our country for a while too, but now they have
yes.
their own. It's all their own, and there's so many islands and so many places. I know I have been there, and I was astounded at how beautiful it was and the places you could go to. You mentioned the beaches, but I went to Manila for a while, and then I didn't get halfway through what is available in the Philippines.
Well, one of my favorite places in the world of physical beauty is the Banaue rice terraces up north in Luzon. And this was an area when all those missionaries came in and converted everybody to Catholicism, they couldn't make it to this very hilly area. So it has remained animist, in fact, and the tribal people were allowed to continue their culture. But anyway, because of these steep mountains, they had to farm. So they cut these unbelievably beautiful rice terraces in this
Wow.
area called Banaue. And rice terraces, I call them accidental art because they were built out of necessity so that
Mhm.
they could farm these mountains and survive, but they happen to be incredibly beautiful. And these are some of the coolest because they go on and on and on, and they're little villages dotted throughout. And yeah, you have to walk distances. The ones in China, built roads and they've built gondolas, but these are much more untouched
Yeah,
for the most part.
absolutely. That sounds great. And I do have to get back there. I've only been there once. You're also seeing interest in places like Papua New Guinea, I understand too, right?
Yes, well, it's very wild and woolly, and it's definitely not for anyone or everyone, I should say. It's not for everyone, but for the very intrepid traveler who is willing to rough it a little bit, you don't have to rough it too much. The culture is absolutely fascinating with these tribal people, and they still live very traditional lifestyles in many cases, like they have for hundreds and hundreds of years. So it's a really, really interesting place to go.
Yeah, I definitely, it's on my list, and we'll see if I, going down to Australia and then going up to Papua New Guinea from there. Now, we also have, sort of more traditional Asian destinations that I'm sure you work with and sell, like Vietnam, Cambodia, Thailand, India. How are those places doing?
Well, Indochina has been our staple from the
Right.
beginning,
Yeah, I know
and
that was your original. Yeah.
yeah, and it's hard to go wrong. We have an office with 30 people in Bangkok.
Mhm.
So that's like our headquarters in Asia
Mhm.
because it's sort of in the middle. And in all of those countries, as well as in India, the service is excellent. The hotels are excellent. So, really good value. Now, India is a bit tougher for some people. It's one of those places that you either love or hate.
Mhm.
I love it.
I do
I
too.
absolutely love it. Well, we're travelers,
Yeah.
but for some people, it's just a little bit too rough.
Yeah, it is amazing. I've only done it once, but I've been trying to get back ever since. And I only did Mumbai and Delhi and Agra and down south, and it was a great trip. I have been trying to get back there. I was astounded. I mean, yes, there is a lot of poverty, and you have to kind of get used to that. But there's also incredible wealth, and
Oh,
that's
yeah.
diversity is interesting, and of course the history is just awesome, incredible. Cambodia, I've yet to go to, and Vietnam, I keep waiting. I'm waiting. Hopefully that later this year, I'm going to get over there. But I understand, and from you and from other folks, it's just an amazing destination. Cambodia and India, and then of course Thailand, I have been to, but not for quite some time. But
Well, Angkor Wat, you have to go to Angkor Wat.
yeah,
It's
everybody
one of the
says
great man.
I'm hoping to do it later this year. I said that last year and somehow I ran out of time. But in terms of seeing that, and that I'm sure you have wonderful programs that take in Angkor Wat and everything else. Now, I understand also that you have some partners. You're partners with Aman on some private jet trips for 2024, and I think you might even have a little space available. Tell us a little bit about
Mhm.
those trips.
So back in 2013, I got a call from Amman and they said, we see what some other companies are doing,
Hmm.
and with their private jet trips, we should have our own private jet trips, but much smaller,
Hmm.
not 80 people, but 16 people,
Right.
no buses. It should
Yeah.
all be private cars. And they said, we need somebody to partner with to actually operate them and provide the jet. So that's what we've been doing. We launched our first in 2015,
Hmm.
and we've been going gangbusters ever since. So we started with the 8 Amans in China, Bhutan, India, Sri Lanka.
Okay.
And
That's not
that
a
was
bad trip.
yeah, no, it was very cool. And that was so successful. All those people said, "Oh, I want to do another trip." So we created a Southeast Asia to Tokyo trip. And then that was so successful. And then we started adding Europe and Morocco. So now we also do the grandest tour, which is Tokyo to Greece, and we do
Now
Kyoto.
that's a lot of Amans.
Yes, yes.
I
So we
assume you're always staying in Amans, right?
yes, and
Okay.
so it's 7 different countries for that one. Then we do Kyoto to Marrakesh, which is Kyoto, Philippines, Bali, Java. Gosh, I have to look
Well,
at it.
and you can
And
and now you could even do New York since they have one here, but that's another story. Because
yeah,
they have been
they
expanding.
want that.
I actually interviewed them at ILTM, and wow, they are just growing immensely, and they have beautiful properties. I've visited many times. The one in Beijing is the Summer Palace is
Yeah.
like a summer palace. You can't go wrong. But to put them all together like you have with these private much more private jets,
Mhm.
it sounds like a wonderful trip. But you said you still have some availability there.
So on Grandest, in April, we still have two spaces left. So
Two
we,
spaces. All right.
right,
Got to
out of
sign up
16.
with Catherine now because it ain't going to go very. We're in February now. So that's fantastic. That sounds like such a wonderful trip. Now, overall, what's your kind of best advice for planning trips to Asia? This year and in actually going into the festive season too.
Well, first of all, book early to
Right.
avoid disappointment. So you really have to get in early these days. The days of last minute, um, well, you can try to go last minute, but then if you don't get what you want,
Yeah.
don't be disappointed. Um, and when you talk about festive, expect prices to be double or triple what they are
Mm.
in the off season. And people are shocked, but that's the way it is in Europe. I mean, Europe,
Of
it's the
course,
same thing.
everywhere. Yeah. Although, we thought, when a lot of places in Asia like China and Japan reopened and, suddenly we had this onslaught into Japan. It became one of the top destinations last year. And now we're starting to see other destinations kind of catch up with it. It's going to be tough. I mean, everybody wants to go back to these places that if they had been there before, they want to go back now because now that they have reopened in the past couple of years. But yeah, but just like Europe, you can find places as long as you also, as you mentioned earlier, if you do a little more off the beaten path, a little more, finding new places to go to within the countries that you visited before, right?
Yes, and just going off the beaten path does give you a lot more options.
Absolutely. Now, is there anything else you want to tell our 126,000 travel advisors about remote lands and about Asia today?
Well, we're preferred suppliers to Virtuoso, Internova Select, Serendipians, and then all the individual groups like GTC
Yeah.
um, and many others. So we work very closely with the top travel advisors in the US and all around the world. And between our offices, we're in New York and Bangkok. We're 24/7. So we have
Okay.
18 people here in our office in New York. We have 30 people in our operations office. In Bangkok, we have a country manager in each country, and then teams of top guides and drivers that we work with all the time. And we know they're really good. We've been in business almost 19 years.
Okay.
Our advisor partners come back to us over and over and over, and we really appreciate that. But we have very close friends who are our advisor partners, and or I should say, they become friends over the years
Yeah.
and
No.
really value them. So it's really nice. And the travel industry is so wonderful. It's just we feel so fortunate. I feel so fortunate that I found my calling in life
Right.
in travel because I was in tech for 15 years
Yeah, all
before.
these people, reform techies and finance people, and they find travel, and oh my God, this is like a revelation, right? That you can actually do this for a living, right?
Yes. Well, it's really nice to be part of this community and to have so many friends. It's so welcoming. I have friends like in the fashion business, and they tell me that it's so cutthroat. Everybody hates everybody. There are no friendships, but in travel, I find it totally different.
It is, and you can be friends with your competitors, and travel advisors can be friends with other travel advisors and with different tour operators, and it's a much more of a community, and it's a welcoming community, and I've been happy to be part of it for the past 32 years. So I'm very happy that I suddenly figured out that travel was much better to cover for journalism than law. So
Uh-huh.
that was like should have been a no-brainer right away, but you're absolutely right. To find this community is incredible. Now, where can travel advisors go? Your website, things like that, to find out more about Remote Lands.
Yes, and on virtuoso.com, we have over 500 itineraries, but they're really just sample itineraries because everything is bespoke. You call us and you tell us about your client's interests, needs, passions, and then we work together to design the perfect itinerary.
Right. So otherwise your URL is like what, remotelands.com, right?
Yes, yes.
Perfect. Thank you. Well, that was, it's great to speak with you now in such a more positive time for travel. When we last spoke, it was during the pandemic, and we didn't know exactly what was going to happen. A lot of your destinations were closed off. China certainly was, Japan was. There were some that were still going, and now you're booming, and it's so wonderful to hear that Remote Lands is doing so well, and as the entire industry is doing well. But we keep worrying about the next big danger in the future, but let's cross our fingers we're not going to have to face that for a while. Again, Catherine, thank you so much for spending some time with us. And then next time we'll do it in person, and I'm sure I'll see you because I know we frequent the same conferences. So we'll see you very soon. All right.
Thank you so much, James. That was wonderful. I always love talking to you, and we always have these lively conversations. So I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Well, we'll have a drink next time at the next conference. We'll see you soon.
For sure.
And I'm James Shillinglaw, and this is Insider Travel Report.